Hey guys, Alex Slate from Tried and True Mortgages here. Just here for another episode of Tried and True Academy. Going to review a document or a review RBC put out of the United States inflation numbers. Came out November 10th, so I just want to go over it a little bit and see what that sort of means for us in Canada, people in the United States as well, but more so specifically Canadians. So let's just jump right into it. Alrighty, so here's the report. Report came out November 10th, 2022, so just yesterday. Um, RBC US Inflation Watch. I do find RBC has good data when it comes to anything economics, financial reports, latest news, etc. So I do like what their experts have to say. If you go to really any of the five major banks in Canada, you can find some good data from any of them. So just to start, early signs of easing inflation. So yeah, that is what we sort of saw yesterday. So the inflation numbers came down a little bit. Um, let's just look at a couple of the main points. Surge in home rent prices close to peak, and ex-shelter inflation showing signs of slowing. Yeah, so home rent has been increasing pretty much month over month by a steady amount because as interest rates rise, home affordability actually decreases. The ability to be able to purchase homes decreases. And therefore, that actually puts upward pressure on rents because more people are looking to rent. There's a higher demand for a remaining supply or a lesser supply. Supply chains returning back to normal, closer to pre-pandemic levels. This is awesome, just because we've had such a major supply chain issue ever since COVID, shipping issues, shutdown issues in China, Asia, Europe. So that's starting to look back to normal, which is nice. Elevated wage growth and broad inflation pressure mean the Fed will continue to hike interest rates for now. So because there is still large inflation, they're still going to raise interest rates. We don't know necessarily when it's going to stop. However, it does look like it's sort of peaking, and we'll see some of that data down here as well. Rents drive half of the US near-term CPI growth. This makes sense, right? So what happens is whenever you raise interest rates, just like I said before, you're going to have what's called inflation inertia. Uh, um, so the rising interest rates just basically cause inflation to rise more, and then we have to raise interest rates again. So it's sort of a bad thing to continue raising interest rates in that case. But the Fed does want to look credible. They don't want to look like they have lost control of inflation, so they're just going to raise interest rates until we start to see some of the easing. So here we can sort of see what's been happening with inflation all the way since March 2021 on this chart. We have home rent, other core inflation, food and energy. What's really significant here is like first off, we saw how high it was getting, in March, all the way up until July here. Then we did start to see energy decrease, and although it decreased quite a bit for the 3 month CPI growth annual rate in September here, we've seen it come back to negative 1.9 from negative 1.4. So that does actually mean it increased a little bit. However, the overall inflation amount decreased, which is good. You will notice though that home rent, like I was saying, you increase interest rates, and we've seen this green bar here actually steadily pretty much increase. We've seen core inflation numbers increase, start to decrease here, which is nice. And then food has sort of remained steady. It hasn't increased or decreased too much. On a difference, like on the 3 month CPI growth level, but food is increasing year over year, which is not good. Leading rent indicators are showing signs of slowing. So year over year growth. So this is nice to see. We did see, steady all the way up until 2020. Then we started to see, 2021 home prices obviously increased quite a bit. So the rent increases as well because affordability was lower. Rent increases happened all the way through 2021 into 2022 here, and then we saw it level off and increase a little bit. and now we've actually seen it decrease, which is nice. So for, from June until September here, we've actually seen a steady decrease, which is nice. So that might indicate that inflationary inertia might actually go away, but we'll see. Moderating supply chain conditions continue to lower prices and delivery times. This is what we were just mentioning before. So index seasonally adjusted, the price index, and then the supplier deliveries index. Lower equals faster. So yeah, we can see, from 2020, we saw this yellow line increase quite a bit, and then it stabilized, and then it increased, and it's been pretty high up until right around here in May, and we've started to see that line decrease, which means that supply deliveries are actually catching up to where they used to be. However, so the price index of deliveries and supply chain, you can see here, right, from July 2020 has been steady, 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 and then again in June here we've seen this decrease. So that's at least nice there. Commodity prices downswing stalling. I mean, I don't think interest rates at all have any effect on oil prices necessarily, because there's a lot of external factors, wars in the world, supply and demand. In 2020 we saw oil prices, per barrel in the negatives, right? And that's because the world was producing so much energy, and that actually had to do with generally speaking, American energy policies, where they were creating so much oil that we saw the price of oil decrease quite rapidly. But now that they stopped doing that, it's more of a government policy than it is a Federal Reserve or a Bank of Canada policy. So the interest rates aren't going to affect that, right? So we've seen energy prices increase. We've seen them since decrease just in July, August, and then sort of been steady here. This also included metals and agriculture, but yeah, so agricultural, that also, the thing is with the metals and the agriculture, those are heavily affected by the oil, actually, because you have to transport all of those things, especially agriculture, farming, distribution, fertilizer, etc. Those are all affected by the oil prices. So if you have higher oil prices, obviously agriculture is going to increase. Labor demand and wage growth peak at high levels. So employment cost index. So year-over-year percent change in employment cost index, right? Job openings as a percent of employment. So we do see job openings up quite a bit. And then the labor demand is also quite high. So this is it's weird. It's a good thing and a bad thing. So a good thing because your economy, obviously, you want people to have jobs. You want there to be job opportunities available. But when you're trying to actually reduce inflation with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, the Bank of Canada raising interest rates, what they're doing is they actually want to slow down the economy a little bit. And in a way, as bad as it is to say, they actually want to destroy some jobs so that people stop spending, so that inflation comes down. However, even with these interest rate increases, like they start showing, we're not really seeing that. So it's an interesting situation. Hopefully we can, have some sort of balance where we have enough people maintain their jobs or keep their jobs or be able to move to new jobs, but still see that inflation come down, which I think is a major factor of supply chain issues, which is why we never had crazy inflation, leading up to the pandemic. It's really just been supply chain. And then we had lower interest rates for 2 years, so that doesn't help. Broad-based price pressures foreshadow more rate hikes. CPI diffusion index, percent of basket excluding shelter, so this doesn't include rent, growing faster than 2% from pre-pandemic levels. So broad-based prices, yeah, you can see like growing at 88% there. So that's not really a good sign. We're just seeing continual growth. We sort of want to see this number reduce quite a bit. Okay, so this is basically what this article is showing. What does this mean for, I guess, Americans and Canadians? First off, Americans, if we do see the interest rate or inflation rate, I should say, decrease past this 7% level, even more likely we won't see an interest rate hike in December, although it might be already set into place. So that's one thing for the Federal Reserve and Americans to look out for. However, if we do see inflation remain steady or increase even further, we're gonna see some more interest rate increases. So for Canadians, that means whatever the Federal Reserve does, likely the Bank of Canada is going to continue to do, because the Canadian dollar or the Bank of Canada is concerned about the Canadian dollar. So just for example, if the American dollar, if interest rates in the United States are high and the higher than, let's say, the Canadian dollar, people are going to take their Canadian currency and transfer it to American currency so that they can invest in higher interest rates, higher yields, which puts downward pressure on the Canadian dollar, right? So that's just one of the factors about the Canadian dollar. So the Bank of Canada will actually they'll always want to sort of stay in line with what the Federal Reserve does. So what this means is that, like, if we see the American Federal Reserve, or at least if they have an indication that the Federal Reserve is going to increase interest rates in December, we're going to see an increase with the Bank of Canada as well. Prediction just for myself, based on what the experts are saying and what we're reading here, I do think inflation is starting to fall and the supply chain issues are being resolved. So if these interest rates, continue to be higher, they keep raising them, we might actually, go into a stagflation situation or even a deflation situation early next year to mid to late next year. So that could be probably even worse than having high inflation, right? Because then you really start to see people lose their jobs, and then you start to see, people losing their jobs, income reducing. It's just not a good situation. So that's it for today, guys. If you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, share it. If you think anybody could find this useful. Thanks for watching, and again, that's Alex Late from Tried and True Mortgages. We help people with home purchases, refinances, equity takeout, investment properties, you name it. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye bye.